Hey 5th grade, Miss Davis here. This week we are going to be talking about volume. So this video is just to kind of go off of what we discussed in class and get a little bit more in depth with it. So when we talk about volume, the first thing that we need to know is that volume is of three-dimensional figures. So those are figures that stick out. They have shape. They have both length, width, and height to them. You probably have talked about two-dimensional figures before. Two-dimensional figures are flat. You could find perimeter and area of those shapes. However, volume is found using three-dimensional shapes. So when we look at three-dimensional shapes, we are talking about, and when we talk about volume, we're talking about unit cubes that are like this. So I can find the volume of this unit cube here. It's a three-dimensional object. It has both length, width, and height. So length is, of course, how long something is, typically going across. Width would be how thick, the thickness of it, how wide it is, and then the height would be how tall it is. So we use these unit cubes typically in the classroom to help you guys build and make different shapes that have different volumes. But today, I'm just going to kind of show you a couple of the different things that we have. So in our first shape here, I have a shape that looks like this. And I can easily find the volume of it simply by just counting the cubes. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So the volume is 4 cubic units. It is made up of 4 of these little cubic blocks here. So that has a volume of 4 unit cubes. I can create another shape with that looks like this. And I can kind of turn it here on the side. Okay, so the same thing I can do with the last one, I can do with this one. I can just count the unit cubes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this shape right here has a volume of 8 cubic units. Now, I'm going to build on to this shape. So I'm going to grab another block here. And I'm going to build onto it like this. So notice it has another layer on there. So now, before I just had 8 blocks right here. But now I have to also consider the 8 blocks that I have on this side. So yes, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 blocks. But I also have to count the ones that I have on this side too. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So the volume of this figure here would be 16 cubic units. And whenever we write and label things for volume, we want to make sure that we are labeling it correctly. So if you have a figure that is measuring 16 cubic inches, there's a couple different ways that you can write it. You could write it like this. So you could write it out just like that, or you could abbreviate it. And anytime that we abbreviate it, we always want to make sure that that inches is labeled with the little 3 as an exponent. And the reason that we use a 3 when we're labeling volume is because we have to take into account 3 different measurements: the length, the width, and the height of an object. So that's where the 3 as an exponent comes up. Okay? Now, anytime that we have a figure with cubic units where we're being able to see the blocks, yes, you can count the cubes to measure, okay? But you can also use the formula for volume. And the formula for volume is length times width times height. And I'll write that right over here. So volume equals length times width times height. So I am going to create another figure. And this figure may still look the same, but I promise you it's not. So if I have this figure here and I'm trying to find the volume, well, the length of the figure here is 2 units. The width here is also 2 units. And the height, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is 5 units. So I can take this and replace my formula down here. 2 times 2 times 5. And we can multiply this out in order to find the volume instead of counting the cubes. So I know right here 2 times 2 is 4. I'm going to use my drop down arrow just like we've been using in order of operations, hopefully with your teacher. And then I have 4 times 5. So 4 times 5 I know is 20. So that means that the volume is going to be 20 units cubed, or 20 cubic units, however you want to write that one out. Alright, so now we can also have figures that look like this. And those are going to be our rectangular prisms, our cubes, different things like that. And we are able to find the volume of those things as well. And this is where we do want to use the formula, because we aren't given those little individual blocks that we can count by. So on this figure here, if I'm looking at it, the length is 4 centimeters, the width is 2 centimeters, and the height is 5 centimeters. So I've got to set those three things up in order to multiply. So I've got the volume equals 4 centimeters times 2 centimeters times 5 centimeters. And in the different properties that some of us may have talked about during school, it doesn't matter which way that you arrange these numbers, you're going to get the same answer either way because you're multiplying. You're multiplying all 3 of the numbers. So I could have wrote this as 2 times 5 times 4, and I would still get the same thing. So I'm going to start right here with 4 times 2. I know that's 8. I have 8 times 5. Well, I know 8 times 5 is 40. So this would be 40. My unit on there is centimeters. So 40 centimeters cubed. And you have to be really careful because some will try to trick you by changing that 3 to a 2. So be very, very careful of that. All right, any questions on volume? Make sure that if you do have questions or you run across anything that you do ask your math teacher during math.